Hello and welcome to India's World. Last Friday, the US launched a cruise missile attack on a Syrian airfield at Al-Shairat, close to Homs. The attack was apparently in response to the use of chemical weapons in Khan Sheikhoun in Syria's Idlib province. 15 Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched from warships USS Ross and USS Porter in the eastern Mediterranean in the early hours of Friday morning. US President Donald Trump claimed that the strike was a direct response to the chemical weapons attack by the Syrian regime, which killed more than 70 people. With this, for the first time since the Syrian war started, the US has now become a direct combatant against the Syrian regime. There was angry response from Russia, which described the missile attack as an act of aggression against a sovereign nation and warned that the strikes were a significant blow to Russian-American relations, which were already in a sorry state. A meeting of the UN Security Council was called on Friday evening to discuss the strikes. At the meeting, while France and Russia described the US response as appropriate, Russia said that the attack was a flagrant violation of international law and an act of aggression. To discuss this event, which may change the balance of forces in the Syrian war, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Niraj Srivastava. He was India's ambassador to Uganda and Denmark. Besides serving in Indian embassies in the United States and Canada, he has also served in Syria, Libya and Saudi Arabia. We have with us Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan. He is Professor of West Asian Studies at the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And we have with us Dr. Waiel Awwad. He is the South Asia Bureau Chief of SANA, the Syrian Arab News Agency. So I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Ambassador Srivastava, let me begin with you. How does the use of chemical weapons, which would turn the international community against Syria, help President Assad? And why would he use chemical weapons at a time when his forces had already captured Aleppo? They were preparing to launch an attack against Idlib, which is under rebel control, and when US and Russia were trying to cooperate to fight the Islamic State, and when the US itself had said that they don't want regime change, and they didn't want to remove Assad, and that was a business for the Syrian people.
Well, it does not help make sense for President Assad to use chemical weapons. As you yourself said, that his forces are making steady progress, and any such act would have inevitably invited external response, as it has done now. So there is no motive for him to do that. Secondly, he does not benefit from it, from an attack like this. It is the jihadi and terrorist groups which benefit. And thirdly, I would like to draw your attention to a similar event 4 years ago in August of 2013, when chemical weapons were used in a suburb of Damascus. And initially, the Syrian government was blamed for it. But later, after investigations had been carried out, they found that the Syrian government was not responsible. It was the jihadi groups which were responsible. And finally, so far, there has been no investigation into this incident to determine who carried out the attack, who was responsible for it. So, even without an investigation, merely to assume is not correct, and to bomb a country on the basis of a mere assumption which has no basis is not correct in my view.
Professor Ramakrishnan, if this nerve gas, this sarin gas attack in Khan Sheikhoun is not to be considered a false flag operation, because a number of diplomats internationally have said it's a false flag operation to draw America into the Syrian war. Is it not incumbent upon the United States to at least share some intelligence? I'm not saying all intelligence, to share some intelligence to show that this was the work of the Assad regime and it was not done to provoke America?
I think one is struck with the speed with which the attack was coming. There was consultation with American allies. Once the thing was happening, you have within a couple of days everything moving without any inquiry, as we have seen. So it means that there is some calculation going on in the United States to turn the tide of events in Syria and in the West Asian region as a whole. And this comes at a time when there was a whole lot of criticism on the killing of civilians in one of the US operations. We have seen that. And at the same time, there's a whole lot of setback at the domestic level for Trump. And this is one way of asserting his presidency in the traditional American sense, where involvement in military involvement or attacks on targets becomes a kind of political imperative now to be an active US president. But that's at the world's own peril, actually.
Yeah. We're going to discuss that a bit. But Dr. Awwad, you are a Syrian. Now you tell me, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that the strike was an absolutely made up pretext, saying that it reminds me of the situation in 2003, not even 2013, 2003, when the United States and Britain, along with some of their allies, attacked Iraq, saying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Even the 213 chemical attack, as Mr. Niraj Srivastava pointed out, was not found to be conducted by the Syrian regime. In fact, a UN official investigating that, Carla Del Ponte, had said that it was most likely done by rebels and not by the Syrian army. Now, could this latest attack also be a false flag operation? Because if it is a false flag operation, and if US has got involved without any legal basis, then this is something that the world should take note of.
Well, I think I can raise this picture, which can give you the false flag that we have seen Colin Powell doing it in Iraq. We have seen Hillary Clinton doing it in Libya. Now we have seen Nikki Haley doing it in Syria. So I don't believe beyond this word of saying that they have already gone into this kind of an operation for two. The motive and the objective, we can talk later about it. But let me stress on the point.
But that's a correlative conclusion you're drawing, that they did it in the past, they must have done it again. I'm not convinced. I'm merely asking you, could this be a false flag operation? If so, does it change things?
I think it is a false flag operation in two ways, Bharat. One is to give a lesson to Trump, who thought that he can behave as an independent president from the American establishment. Secondly, it has never been because of the chemical that this retaliation really has happened. Because when you are this kind of firing from 1,500 kilometers and those missiles of 59 missiles into Syria, it needs lots of planning. And this planning has been already in place. It's just not this a bar fighting. It's not that you're pressing from California bottoms. It is simply a procedures which was set for the president, who showed some kind of reapproachment with the Syrian crisis, that he is not for a regime change as the previous administration have said. He already accused the previous administration of doing chaos in the region by attacking in Iraq, in Libya, in Yemen and Syria, and he said, I am not. So now he's party to the chaotic.
Now he's changed his position.
He's not going to change. It's a political message, and the political message is very clear to the American administration, that they are going to make sure that he is going to fall in line with them.
Okay. Now, before we discuss this further, Ambassador Srivastava, since neither the US Congress, not that congressional approval means very much, Congress had approved the Iraq invasion, but there was no UN authorization, there was no international consultation except with allies. So did President Trump have a legal basis for military action against Syria? Even if Assad had used chemical weapons, would he be justified in going and dropping 59 Tomahawk missiles on a country?
No. And this is a categorical no, because in terms of international legality, he should have obtained a UN Security Council resolution, and that would have come only after a fair and credible investigation into the matter as to who was responsible for this particular attack. Many people, including myself, do not think that President Assad ordered these chemical attacks, because it doesn't make any sense. There has been no investigation. So, this action of the US is completely illegal in terms of international law.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing how the limited missile attacks by the United States on Syria may change the course of the Syrian war. Professor Ramakrishnan, how much of a radical departure is the Trump administration's first foray into Syria as a direct combatant from Trump earlier claiming America first, that he was not in the business of regime change, and that he wanted to take care of the American people more than the rest of the police in the rest of the world. And why did he change his mind? How can just looking at television and looking at pictures of dead children change the course of history in this manner? After all, it's not the first time that children have been dying in Syria. They've been dying even without chemical weapons.
I think this America First policy, as I've noted in the earlier segment, that there are a whole lot on the Obamacare and many other fronts, and tremendous opposition from the media and so on. So the America First is not picking up very well as he imagined it to happen within the short span of time that he was president. And the international situation, once you're president, you're getting information, the media images in which you interpret differently now. And that has gained him some allies from the other side of the political equation, but also in a way gained the wrath of some of his very core conservative elements within the Republican Party, who felt that he is now reaching too much out rather than looking inward and so on. But the most important thing is that his fiasco with the Russian affair as a whole in American politics, that has become such a messy affair with all the intelligence and other thing, what was termed as Russian involvement in American elections and so on. So now is a moment where you can come out of it, wriggle out of it. All those inquiries, etc., now will go slow. It will go take a back seat. So he has a lot to gain out of it. And the humanitarian phase of it is for others to deal with. To just deal with, yes.
Dr. Awwad, but let me ask you a question this time about a conspiracy theory. Okay. There are people who are saying that is the establishment striking back at Trump? First Michael Flynn was removed, then Steve Bannon was removed. Both of them, whatever their political views, were actually for better ties with Russia, stabilizing Syria. So do you think that the deep state has struck back at President Trump to the point where he had no option but to reopen the Syrian conflict and put himself in confrontation with Russia?
I think it is a true statement you have made, and I would say also add to it, I believe in
as
this.
A conspiracy theorist, do you agree
I
with
don't
me?
believe anything coincidence. I don't believe there is a coincidence anything, because everything is a pre-planned. And I can tell you, because if you follow the American statement, the leaderships from the Vice President Joe Biden, for John Kerry, from Hillary Clinton, from name it, Simon Hirsch, everybody have said that the American involvement, it is till deep feet is inside the Syrian and the Middle East affairs actually. If we look at the chronology of American president, we know what kind of a mess they have created in the region. Having said that, I would say yes, there is a pressure on, but not to the conflict of Trump to conflict with Russia. Why? There are bigger perspective to it. American is more concentrating in the Asia Pacific. So they need China. They need to contain China. So they have to appease Russia. So this kind of an attack, it's just a political message to the administration of Moscow that also we have to sit across the table and decide the future of the Middle East and how to reapproachment. This is one of the aspects. Okay. The second aspect also, we should see it, the series of meetings that Trump had inside. He had the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia who gave him $200 billion, but he said, Assad is bad. He said, okay, I'll keep it on the table. I'll take that point of view. We will do something. So maybe it's a payback for them. The Israelis have attacked Syria. It was the same airfield which also have used the anti-aircraft missile that fired at the Israelis' incursions into Syria. That is also could be a payback for the Israelis. The third, which is the Russian also, that the Russian told the American, we control the airspace in Syria. You have no businesses there. So there is a question mark here that will the American go for reapproachment with Russia? Because America is not prepared for a full-fledged war. American would like to fight wars with the proxies, and they have succeeded since the Cold War, and they will continue with that.
Okay, now Ambassador Srivastava, with the proactive support of Assad, Assad's forces were able to make gains on the ground. Now, after this air attack, do you think that in the coming days and weeks, Russia would be much more careful in standing with Syria militarily, or do you think it will continue to stand firmly with Syria?
I think Russia will continue to stand firmly with Syria. And if the statements from the Russian official sources which were given last Friday are any indication, they have said that we are going to strengthen the air defense capabilities of the Syrian armed forces, and that we are going to take steps to defend Syria. So I don't think this particular cruise missile attack is going to drastically change Russian plans for Syria.
Okay, Professor Ramakrishnan, how will the missile attack change US-Russia ties? Is it just a pressure tactic? Because what has Russia done besides calling the UN Security Council meeting and suspending mutual information exchange pact on overflights? Russia hasn't done very much. What do you think will be the Russian reaction in the short and medium term?
The Russian support to Bashar al-Assad and the old American position of regime change, which slowly, was transformed into some kind of okay with Bashar al-Assad's situation, which ultimately gave Russia an upper hand in the region, and Russia could utilize that for its purposes, and the increasing Turkey-Russia ties and many other things happening within the region. All that was placing the United States at the back seat in the region in recent times. So this is one way of capturing some lost ground, so that there is, as Waiel was mentioning earlier, that there could be some kind of one-to-one way of speaking with each other, so that there is
why did you need a missile attack for that? After all, Rex Tillerson was going to go to Moscow, I mean, or could go to Moscow, and they could meet and talk.
But then, nobody would care. This is, a very significant message that is sent to Bashar al-Assad, and even though the Americans are at this moment are not capable of changing situation at the ground, but it can always insist on that we are a major player, and therefore there is a kind of balancing that
all right. We're going to continue with this discussion in a bit. Stay with us. We need to take a break just now. Welcome back. We're discussing the impact of the limited missile strikes by the United States on Syria, on the future of the Syrian war. Dr. Awwad, why has Russia revoked the agreement to the US to exchange information about their flights to avoid military accidents in crowded skies of Syria? Is this a signal that any potential partnership between the US and Russia against terrorism in Syria is now over, finished? Or is it to put pressure on the US to come to the negotiating table and end the conflict in Syria? You are saying that US is putting pressure through missile attack. Now I am putting it to you that Russia probably is also putting pressure on the US, saying let's talk.
I think the good point, the positive point, they kept the hotlines on. So that is still on between the two leaders. So that is a very good indication.
No, it was between the Pentagon and it was the military channel that was used.
But they still, the hotline is on. That means only the suspension of the MOU they have signed for the cooperation. Because in the military objective or achievement of this attack has nothing. It is negligence. It has nothing to do on the ground, a reality. Why? Because the assumption of the US is based on a story, not on the reality on the ground. You see, the Russian here is very adamant that they meant to make sure that Syria integrity is retained. There was no question of disintegration of Syria. From Syrian point of view, I will say the American action is merely a prolongation of the war. Why? You remember the attack on Deir ez-Zor, they killed 86 soldiers. Immediately after that, it was the hill which was taken by IS and taken over. The same attack happened in Homs, where the Syrian government retaken the oil, the gas field in that part of Homs. They have already now attacking the Syrian government. So it is the hypocrisy of the United States fighting IS in Mosul, supporting them in Syria. So this is a very deep hand It is exposure of the collaboration between the US and Al-Qaeda and IS in Syria. I tell you why. Because all our sources of information in Idlib from where? It is run by Al-Qaeda, it is Al-Nusra, and it is all 1,250 militia groups are settled there. 50,000 mercenaries are there on the ground. And who is the voices coming for you to reliable to know who did the attack? You are covering up for a thorough investigation of who is behind the chemical attack.
White helmets are the main source.
White helmet, MI6 and MI5 have $200 million they have given them. Everybody knows. It is already written there.
Okay, all right. I don't know whether we can verify that. But Ambassador Srivastava, after the limited strikes in Syria, does the US have a plan for what it seeks to achieve in Syria, or what a post-Assad Syria might look like? And if regime change in Syria takes place successfully through terrorism and through US support to anti-establishment forces on the ground, then might not such a strategy also be used against Iran next?
To my mind, I think after this attack, the message from the US is, and in fact the Secretary of State Tillerson, in one answering to one of the questions by a journalist, he said that yes, regime change is an objective, that Assad must go. So this is a shift from the position taken by Trump before the elections.
Or Nikki Haley 1 week ago.
1 week ago. So this is an important shift, that yes, regime change is again on the table as an American objective. The second the objective is, in case regime change cannot take place for whatever reason, then the US and Western objective is to divide and partition Syria and to take the eastern portion.
But how is this any different from Hillary Clinton's plan for Syria? It was the same plan.
Yeah, it is the same plan.
So so Trump has swallowed his words, his perspective, and said, all right, Hillary Clinton was right.
Unfortunately, yes, because if you see the positions taken by him before he became president, and even for some time after he became president, and you see the positions now, they are the same positions. They are regime change, partition of Syria, so that they can set up a Sunni state in Deir ez-Zor, you know, in that part. And they have already, the number of troops, US troops in Syria is several thousand, more than 5,000 troops are already there.
And the goal of preventing Russian gas going to Europe and an American-led pipeline from Qatar to Europe.
Qatar to Europe.
So back to square one.
Back to square one, and which means it is not good news for President Assad and for Syria. And if regime change succeeds in Syria, or even if it is partitioned, again it is not a good signal for the region, because the same model, as you said, can be used for Iran later, and ultimately for Russia itself.
Okay. Because
there are hawks in America who say that who are calling for regime change in Russia itself.
Okay. Professor Ramakrishnan, in retrospect, do you think Russians must be kicking themselves because they were hoping for a partnership with US and they thought Trump was a very positive person? Not only the Russians, even Assad had said Trump is our natural ally. Right. So do you think Russians have given up on ensuring a peaceful transition in Syria with the help of US, even if it meant sacrificing Assad?
Yes, Russia was not expecting this much from Trump. Not much positive, closer linkage was expected. Yeah. But at the same time, the indications are that Russia is not, calling for a kind of all-out confrontation with the United States on this issue.
No, I'm not interrupting. I'm on cooperation.
On the cooperation side, there are possibilities still, but Russia has to now, do its things from not the position of strength that it already had, and therefore Trump's action in a way has put things in a balance now.
So that's good for America from the American perspective.
For them, yes, but then the whole suffering of the Syrians, all the humanitarian crisis created by the Syrian regime on the one hand and created by the external players there. Yeah. That is going to continue. Okay. Because in this kind of a situation, the most important thing is that, international legality, even the domestic legality of the United States, etc., is not going to determine the thing, because we have seen that the infringement of sovereignty has now become a norm.
Okay.
And the United States is still establishing that, and which will have effects elsewhere in the region.
We are running out of time. We just got 1 minute left, so please limit yourself to a minute. I want to ask you, what are the conclusions that the Islamic State will draw from the US attack? Will they take comfort in the fact that they are being strengthened by America because they have attacked their enemy? Or will they see the missile attack as a proof of Trump's resolve to follow through his military promises? Because he has also promised that he will go after IS.
Well, I think there was celebration in the street of Idlib and in Deir Zor and Raqqa.
That may have been momentarily.
They were celebrating,
I'm saying strategically speaking.
They're celebrating the attack. The IS and Al-Qaeda and all the terrorist organizations on the ground were celebrating as much as the British which have already approved and supported the American action, while in 2013 they sent it to the parliament, they said no. So there is a new indication strategically thinking, because you have to look at it from strategy. I know you give me a minute, but let me give you in this 1 minute what will be the next step. Next step is a Sunni-led coalition where the United States would like the Russian, would like the Egyptian, would like the Saudis, would like the Jordanian to take an active part in this, because we have already formed this mercenaries from Sudan, from Egypt, from all these parts of the world. They wanted to make the fight in the region as a Sunni Shia. It's a proxy war fought in Syria. We are paying with our own blood on the war on Syria, because the ultimate goal is to make sure that this part of the world is disintegrated and they retain and remain for years to come dependent on the American.
No, we've really run out of time. How does that help America to destabilize this region, as he's pointing out? You know, they put Sunni regimes in so many places, it hasn't helped them, because they never remain your puppet regimes. You know, the moment you mix religion with politics, it's the extremists who always win.
Unfortunately, it does not. But then the United States has followed policies in the past in countries like Iraq or Libya, which have led to disintegration of those countries, huge refugee flows into Europe.
Although Iraq, they put a Shia regime in place.
If they put Shia regime in place,
supported the minority Sunnis.
And the ISIS grew out of the invasion of Iraq. Al-Qaeda was not present in Syria earlier, now it is present. So if you look at the long-term interests of the United States, it is not in the long-term interest.
Okay. On that note, we really have to
the arms industry is the sole beneficiaries who win from the wars.
I don't think it's only the arms industry, but thank you very much, Dr. Waiel, Awwad, Professor A.K. Ramakrishnan, Ambassador Niraj Srivastava, for participating in this discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again as usual next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.